You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
Welcome to the Sweet Spot Podcast. My name is Lynn, your host, and Ken is my co-host. Ken, what's going on?
Oh, Lynn, it is going. It is going. I'm so happy to be here. I'm looking forward to this episode of the Sweep Spot.
Episode 361.
What? 361?
Yep.
That's really hard to believe. That's impressive, Lynn. Good going.
It really is. So Ken and I are both former Disneyland Custodio cast members, and we talk Disneyland. We are the #1 Disneyland podcast, hosted by two former Disneyland Custodio cast members.
Number one.
We are also the authors of the books Cleaning the Kingdom. We have 2 volumes. You can get signed copies paperback on our website, thesweepspot.com, signed by both of us, or you can get them at Amazon if you don't want them signed over there, both editions, and then our volumes, I should say, and then digital copies like Kindle, Apple, all that, and then audio. You can get both books on audio through audible.com. I think iTunes has it. So anywhere where audiobooks are found, you can get those.
And we don't really spend a lot of time on this these days, but really, we've got just a lot of information in those books. If you're into Disneyland history at all, or how things are done at Disneyland, the books go in depth into that.
Yeah. Critically acclaimed. We also, if you want,
critically acclaimed.
They are. If you want to help support our show, we'd truly appreciate it. And you can do that by joining our Patreon. You can go to patreon.com and search The Sweep Spot, or you can go to our website, thesweepspot.com, and there's a link on there that'll take you to our Patreon page. And for $5 or more a month, you can get 1 bonus episode per month recorded just by Ken and I. And we cover a variety of different topics, all surrounded around Disneyland mostly. And you also we do a live recording of our current events, which is our news segment. Every once a month, you can join in on the chat. We have a chat room, and you can kind of leave comments, and we will read some of them as we record the show. It's a lot of fun. And speaking of Patreon, we have a new one. We'd like to welcome Les Scott.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. So, like I said, you can join Patreon to really help us pay the bills. We have a lot of expenses as we kind of upgraded the way we record things. So we have an extra bill now. So,
fun.
Keep the ship afloat.
It does.
Right?
It does cost money to. It does cost money to put this show together, and we've got a nice, extensive archive online, and all that all costs money. So, please help out.
We're not like YouTube where they, they make money. So we do not do that. But anyhow, thank you. Yeah, if you'd like to do that, you can. And speaking of ways to help out. We've spoke on this show many times about our good friend Jim Corcus. He's been on our show many times. If you are new to this show, go back and listen to any of the episodes you see Jim Corcus in. You will not be let down. He's an author. He's written so many books on Disney in general, not just parks. And he's a wealth of knowledge. He just is a really good guy, and he's had a lot of health issues lately, and he's going to have a lot of medical bills. And one way to support him is by buying some of his books. But there's a new way, and we're going to have it in our show notes. You can go and look for those. There's a GoFundMe page for Jim
Yes.
Corcus, and even $1, whatever. Every little bit will help him. I know that he would
$1,
truly appreciate
$5,
it.
$10, whatever you can give.
Yeah, he's
So,
a very good guy, and we hope that for a speedy recovery for Jim.
absolutely.
So tonight, for our main topic,
Yes.
we're going to welcome some guys from another podcast, the Supreme Resort podcast. And it's a very good podcast. They kind of talk about comparisons with Disneyland and Walt Disney World, and they go in depth about that. And it's a really good podcast. And you're going to get a little taste of that tonight as we have a discussion about Walt Disney World and Disneyland. We do some comparing, but it's mostly just if you have never been to Walt Disney World, some things that
Yeah.
you need to see. If you haven't been to Disneyland, some things you need to do and see. So it should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. So we're going to get right into our main topic up next. Looking to book a vacation to Disneyland Resort, Walt Disney World Resort, Disney Cruise Line, Disney Alani, Disneyland Paris, Adventures by Disney, Universal Studios Hollywood, Universal Studios Orlando, then I can do that for you. If you contact me and we can talk about all the different options and dates, and we can kind of even make recommendations on which days might be the best for you to go. And also as a complimentary, when you book with us, we will book your dining for you if you'd like, special events. And we also, when we book a vacation for you, we just don't say have a good time after we book it for you. We are there every step of the way. We contact you before your trip to make sure everything's squared away. We even have a checklist to make sure that you have everything you need. Reservations, dining, all these different things. Your transportation, if you need help with that from the airport, any of those sort of things, we can help you with that too. We want to make the vacation the best it can be for you, because I know that vacations aren't cheap, and we can help you do that. So if you contact me, that's Lynn, and the email is lbarron@concierge.com. That's LBARRON@concierge.com. Or you can go to the sweepspot.com, and there's a link on our front page there. You can click on that, and there's information on how to contact me. But I'd love to talk to you and help you book the best vacation possible.
Welcome to the Walt Disney World Vacation Complex, including Epcot Center and the Magic Kingdom. Today, Epcot Center is open from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Welcome to Disneyland, the happiest place on earth. Before you begin your journey, a few words about Disneyland in general. Disneyland is a first and original. Since the day it opened in 1955, more than 100 million people have come here from the four corners of the earth to participate in adventures unique in all the world.
So we're going to have a different kind of show tonight. We have guests, but we're going to be doing not necessarily a comparison, but just a discussion about some of the differences between Walt Disney World and Disneyland and some of the attractions. And who better to have on to discuss that is the guys from the Supreme Resort podcast. Welcome, guys.
Hi there.
Hey.
I was hoping we would say hello like the Three Stooges, but we didn't.
Yeah.
Next time.
Well, we'll go around. So we have Dan.
Hello.
Eric. You know Eric.
Howdy, yeah.
And Jimmy.
People have heard me before.
Hello.
Thank you. Sorry. Should have taken me second.
You're good. So this will be fun. So we're going to, this is beneficial for Disneyland regulars, which we're more of a Disneyland podcast, to hear, what Walt Disney World has to offer. And, why they should go on these attractions over there, or why they shouldn't. So, and then we'll kind of do the same for Disneyland. So, I thought we'd put Eric right on the spot,
Oh,
and
no.
'cause- yeah. So, Eric, what's one attraction that you think that a Disneyland regular should go on, and why?
Well, if you are a Disneyland regular, if you're one of the very intelligent people who really enjoy the Sweep Spot podcast, I think kind of
Andrew.
the biggest go-to, the kind of granddaddy of them all is Spaceship Earth. It's
Mhm.
if you like dark rides, if you like old school Disney stuff, I mean, this is it. I mean, it's an entire park that you don't have at Disneyland, and you know, there's still some people that think that the entire park is inside that giant golf ball. So go for it. I mean, it's such a time capsule, and if you've never been on it before, I mean, sure, you don't have that nostalgia of, oh, I remember when Walter Cronkite was the narrator, but it's literally an icon. It's the weenie of the park. It's right there in front of you, and yeah, well worth any wait to get on. And there usually isn't that long of a wait. I don't think I've seen much more than half an hour, unless things are really crazy at the park. So definitely first place to start, in my opinion.
Yeah, and if that ride has more than a 30-minute wait, just turn around and walk
Yeah, just
out.
wait.
No, just
Oh,
leave
really?
the park.
Go.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Go to Gator World.
There you go.
Well, I have been on it once, because I have been to Disney World once. It was not it was in 1999, so it's been a while.
Just once.
Just once so far.
Just
Really,
once.
all you need
Wow.
per trip.
Yeah.
Here, Lynn, you
Yeah,
need to
go ahead.
recreate it, but you need to recreate it with Walter Cronkite. So just sit back and relax. And for eons, our planet has
There you
drifted
go.
as a spaceship through the
Yes.
and for a moment, we have been its passengers. Anyway,
It's amazing you have that recording at the ready.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Wow.
we couldn't get Asher prepared to do it, but we do have someone that could do a really quality read of that.
Oh my God.
Ken, what do you have
what do I have for what?
for if
Well,
if a Walt Disney
okay.
World a regular was to visit Disneyland, what one attraction would you tell them they have to go on, and why?
Splash Mountain. Oh no. No, now I'm sad.
I have news.
What one? I don't know. Probably Indiana Jones Adventure.
Mhm.
You know. Now if they close their eyes, they might think they're on Dinosaur, but
Exact duplicate.
but the scenery and the music and the sounds and the special effects and everything make it worth it. Even though they've ridden Dinosaur, the Indiana Jones Adventure, they would just have to do that.
Was that true? The track is exactly
It's an identical ride.
Yeah.
Everything is the same. The
The-
movements are the same.
The track,
It's
the
identical.
vehicles, yeah. But yeah, it's the same layout and everything. But the scenery is just entirely, obviously, the scenery, the music, the sound effects, you know, the special effects. It's all completely different. So
well, here's the
I would
question.
say maybe ride
Do
it
you-
twice. Maybe
Well, here's the
ride it.
question.
You know,
Do
yeah.
you think that Indiana Jones is better than Dinosaur?
Absolutely,
Okay.
no
Yes.
question.
Agree.
And it's been decided on the Supreme Resort, so that is the final answer.
I agree
Perfect.
that they're better, but the host that was on that helped us get to that had a good point that if you ride Dinosaur because it's like scary, not so much thrilling, but actually frightening,
Mhm.
then you don't get so much of that on Indiana Jones. I agree, Indiana Jones is better, but there is that.
Yeah,
How I explain it to people is Dinosaur is exactly Indiana Jones, but darker, louder, and more dinosaurs.
Well, and Indy feels, I mean, neither of them have a particularly coherent story, but Indy feels like there's a story, but maybe just because there's a central character.
Yeah, there's an okay story for Dinosaur. They spent a lot of
How
time
dare you.
setting it up.
well, Indiana Jones is don't look into the eyes of the
Right.
idol, otherwise everything goes haywire. So and what happens is some idiot in your vehicle looks into the eyes and everything goes haywire. So
It's always
that's
me.
that's the story. You know,
Just once, you know.
Yeah, and the queue's amazing too.
Come on, guys, let's do
Yeah.
it. Let's do it right this
Get everybody on the ride psyched up.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of redefined the queue in a way. The sort of the main feature of the dinosaur queue that I always found fascinating, its original sponsor was McDonald's. And so as you're going into the room where the ride vehicles load, there are pipes above your head, and they are yellow, red, and white. And the chemical composition written on those pipes are for ketchup, mustard, and mayonnaise. That is sort of the defining characteristic of the queue, outside of, of course, Mrs. Cosby.
You love that
Wow.
fact, don't you, Jimmy?
I love that fact. And that's why I love these parks, is that just little details like that no one would ever notice or care. But that's why I love it.
That is cool. I didn't know that. Dan, how about you? Do you have something that Disneyland folks should
Disneyland folks.
see at Disney World?
Okay, there's kind of the, I don't want to say obvious in an insulting way, but in a non-insulting way, obvious things like, like what Eric said over there, the big nerd. For me, I think what I found most fascinating the first time I went, and I've been several times, was that there are a lot of little like mind fudgy moments that happen throughout, and one of them being like Pirates of the Caribbean. It's shorter. I don't know that it's necessarily worse, but it feels worse.
Wow. How many hours did we spend on that one?
More than 3. But it's one of my favorite experiences at Disney World because there's so much that's similar, and then there's so much, it's almost equal amount similar and different. And that's really interesting for me.
That was
okay.
Pirates, Dan?
Yeah, Pirates.
Huh. Interesting.
It is one of my favorite rides at Disney World, and just for that experience, because that's not an experience we have in our normal day-to-day life. I mean, unless you like meet, I don't know, twins or something, but not even that. Like twins, like opposite twins. Where
You mean
it's
like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito?
No, it's almost like it's I can't even explain. It is entirely its own experience. Of course, I wouldn't say waste your entire vacation doing things like that, but it is extremely interesting.
It definitely set the standards for dark themed rides.
Yeah, yeah.
And it really is kind of like Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger. One is impressive and massive, and the other one's real short. It's like, hey, let's go down the flume, and it's over.
Yeah, and even like to the point, like even the skeletons look different. Like the skulls on them look different. Like it's not wrong. I mean, it's wrong. Let's be honest. But it's just it reads to the Disneylander eye, at least to this one. It read as like, oh, is this knots?
Wow.
But not in that diminishing way. It's sort of like a wait, this is it's of course, and then like about halfway through, your brain does this gymnastics of like, well, yeah, of course it's gonna be different.
So I've heard the queue is better at Walt Disney World. Is that because I don't remember?
Meaning they
most of that.
have one? Yeah.
Yeah, they have a queue. That's the biggest difference.
It's
that's
elaborate.
That's not very hard.
Well, one of the things that I like the most about the queue is something I learned when we recorded that episode where we compared the two. Is Eric pointed out that there is a form of a game of chess, which is it's a stalemate, right? It's something that you can never win the game. And in the queue for the lightning lane side, which didn't used to be, if you look down at a certain point, you can see 2 skeletons that are in a stalemate situation. So it's one of those things that they'll be there forever because that game could never end, and maybe that's why they died playing chess in a game that would never end.
Well, and those skeletons exist.
If they ever do a War Games attraction, that should be in the queue.
There we go.
That those skeletons exist at Disneyland in the bar scene, but you don't get that same angle
Perspective.
the perspective. So that stalemate thing, whether it exists or not at Disneyland, you wouldn't know. I mean, nobody but like an expert would know, but that's part of the fun, right?
Sure.
I'd like to pose that perhaps the skeletons died because they were at the bottom of a well, but the stalemate works too.
Well, we have the bayou at Disneyland, and I think that just sets it all up.
Yeah,
That's true.
big one.
And Dan, what do you call the Blue Bayou equivalent at Disney World? What did you call it?
Azul Bayou.
Azul Bayou.
Azul
It's in the ride of the what is it called?
The
Not Casa
Caballeros.
the Caballeros ride at Epcot, Mexico Pavilion. It's a similar sort of thing. That will be the episode we record. Will be Blue Bayou versus Azul Bayou.
Or Battle of the Bayous, Azul versus Blue.
That's right.
Wow. Okay, writing that one down.
All right, I'm going to move on.
Wait, I didn't get an answer.
No, it's my turn.
Oh, sorry.
So I was going to say the Matterhorn bobsleds.
All right.
There's no comparison to that. I mean, you could say expedition, but I don't want to do that. That's totally different kind of thing. But I just Walt Disney World could go on Matterhorn. I know that it's hard on the back and neck sometimes, but it's a classic. It's been there since 1959. It's the first steel roller coaster. Yeah, it's a must do at least once.
That's true. Yeah,
and I would counter that, Lynn. My answer was going to be, if you're a Disneylander and you need to ride one thing,
okay,
every Disneylander, to your exact point that I was about to say, First Steel 2 roller coaster, Matterhorn, etc., it's an icon. It's an icon for all Disney theme parks. There's a Yeti. There's it's that sort of thing. So
right,
Expedition Everest is the spiritual successor of the Matterhorn.
True.
It is Disney World's Matterhorn. There's a Yeti. There's the buildup. There's the story and everything. But you won't have to see a chiropractor after, which is really nice. But yeah, so I would say if you're a Disneylander, you've been on Matterhorn, go on Expedition Everest first thing, because it'll sort of it's not a mind-boggling experience, and it doesn't really matter to you if you ever knew that Yeti actually worked. It's still an impressive figure that has a lot of strobe lights on it.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah.
Do you skip Space Mountain, Disneyland to Disney World? I mean, unless you're a completist, like, is it necessary?
Are we going to go there with that? Yeah,
I don't know.
I think Space Mountain at Disneyland for sure, right?
Yeah.
I think you need to do both. I think you know, if you're a Walt Disney World regular, you need to do the Disneyland version.
Oh, absolutely.
And vice versa. If you're a Disneyland regular, you need to do the Walt Disney World version. Yes, it's basically the Matterhorn in the dark, but it's different enough, that it's worth the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it does hurt more, but you've got two different tracks, and the layout of the ride is vastly different from Disneyland's.
I don't like that there's no onboard audio at Disney World, and I remember one of the arguments of that episode is, which is better between Disneyland and Disney World Space Mountain, is that once the ride is done, then you kind of just are in the ride. and Dan, I think, said it's an opportunity for you to reflect on what you just saw. You're still just sitting in the ride.
It's contemplation time.
That's contemplation time. That's right.
What just happened?
Yeah.
Oh, that just happened above me. How interesting.
It's a good point, Ken. I forgot about that. It was the two tracks. So like Matterhorn, that's where that came from. Yeah.
Yeah, and at times in one section you see the other car zooming along.
Maybe.
Potentially.
Hopefully.
Like the Matterhorn.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a people mover in there too, so.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
Just
you would
saying.
people mover.
The Disneyland version of Space Mountain used to have a people mover going through it.
That's right.
Yeah.
We don't need the people mover. We like our empty track. It's decorative.
Yes. Jimmy, what do you have?
I just gave it the Expedition Everest.
Was that it? Okay.
That was the one. Or Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Cosmic Rewind. It is the
Mm.
spiritual successor to Space Mountain,
Mhm.
and a phenomenal ride. It's worth the individual Lightning Lane price, whatever it is.
I've heard that. Yeah.
It is a lot of fun, and yeah, some people get a little motion sick on there, from what I hear. I don't know.
Does it spin?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster that spins. It's wild.
It's like an Omnimover meets a roller coaster. So the Imagineers can kind of direct your focus where they
Mhm.
want you to look. And so as you're going down a helix and your car is moving to the side at the same time, I could see where he's coming from for sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go to, I don't know, Azul, buy you and then go on that ride right away. But
Sun on Hill Inn, by the way.
Well,
if
you,
you're wondering.
you can't because it's a really long monorail ride. Wait, no, it's the same
no,
place.
it's the same park. It's next to
Oh,
each other almost
that's right.
practically.
I
Well,
rescind my
so-
joke.
So just going back and forth between that attraction and Mission Space, so until you lose your lunch or something, you know.
Mhm.
It's a
I
new
see, yeah.
challenge.
Oh man, can you imagine? That is a
TikTok.
challenge.
Or you have some sort of medical emergency or something, you know.
That's funny.
Oh my god, yeah, the vomit challenge. You go test track to Mission Space to Cosmic Rewind, just one after the other.
Well,
But yeah,
test track gives you plenty of time to recuperate, as they
Yeah, I
tell you
guess.
about like lug nuts, and this here is a wrench.
That's why you start with it, because it ends
True,
with
true,
the
true,
fast
true.
part.
I was thinking about like going on all of them repetitively.
No, just one after the other.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, Eric, your turn.
Oh, we're back to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Same question.
Yeah, just yeah. Either one.
Okay. Well, I suppose if you're a Disneylander, I mean, really, even before you go to Spaceship Earth, you've got to go to the Magic Kingdom. My
Mhm.
wife doesn't feel like we've really started a Disney World vacation until we've come into the Magic Kingdom.
Right.
And as a Disneylander, I mean, don't feel intimidated by the very large castle.
Insult it.
You might not be able to eat dinner in there because reservations are hard to get, but yeah, I mean, you have to at least see it. If you want to feel superior, just hold on to the fact that your castle park has like 7 times more rides than
Mm.
the Magic Kingdom.
People should do the opposite of what people from Disney World do when they come to Disneyland, which is like basically bully the castle because it's too small. They should just be like, that is unreasonably large.
Unacceptable. Someone could live in there.
What a gaudy large gesture that is.
It's an atrocity.
Yeah, distracting. So is that what you're talking about? The castle? Is
Yeah,
that your
I mean, just
answer? Okay.
Magic Kingdom in general it has to be on the list. You've got, I mean, who's not gonna go?
Yeah.
But yeah, you've got to experience that. If you've never been there, come and see our really big castle.
Yeah, we have an attraction in Disneyland. I mean, technically attraction, but it's not.
Yeah, it's a
really
good
one.
attraction.
It's a fine attraction for
Yeah.
what it is.
And
Yeah.
if you bring a turkey leg in there, you could technically eat in the castle.
Mhm.
could.
And make the handrails
Without
slippery.
reservation.
Right.
Yes, you can. Ken, what do you think?
What would someone from Walt Disney World want to
Mhm.
experience at Disneyland?
Yeah.
Easy park hopping.
Mm.
Yeah, well, I would say they'd have to do Radiator Springs Racers.
Mm.
You know, they'll recognize it as similar to Test Track in terms of the ride system, but it's a much better use of the technology, I think.
Yeah. So more of a dark ride. Well, I guess Test Track has a dark ride atmosphere to it, but
Well, this one's an actual like it's not like living with the car where you then go fast at the end.
The pitch for Test Track, the current iteration is, do you like blue light?
it is unique. They don't have it in any other park, right? In the
Well,
world.
the ride system is the same as Radiator Springs, and for the record, when we compared the two, Radiator Springs did win.
Good.
It's a better ride.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Same ride system, but totally different story and ride and attraction.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Test
Cool.
Track is like it's like that. It's like the weird cable channel that talks about nothing but not like an on-brand science channel, like an off-brand science channel, followed by something thrilling. Where Radiator Springs rather is like it's a Disney ride.
It's a story. It's a dark ride about a movie that you like.
Yeah,
With characters that you enjoy.
Those are my friends. I'm going on an adventure with my friends.
Dan, what do you can pick either one because you're kind of on both sides. So you could pick a Disneyland attraction or a Walt Disney World one.
I would say I'm gonna stick with Disneyland and Disney World, at least for now, because we stumbled on Tom Sawyer's Island being kind of a shockingly different experience. I mean, it's the same. It's not like, you go and it's based on, Clive Barker or something. Like it's the same basic idea. But at Disney World, you really feel the benefit of size. And they keep it weirder and smaller. There's more things to like feel like you're discovering. Where at Disneyland, I mean, I still love it, but it's more just like, okay, now look here. Now look in this window, and over here, do you see that over there? Let's have a sign. Which is like, I mean, it's okay, but at Disney World, they have this thing that they do sometimes where they will build something and they will just kind of go, and it's done, and not really revisit it, which can be a bad thing. But in this case, it's actually a great thing because there's all sorts of stuff in there that's probably just blatant OSHA violations, but it's just it feels old and in a really good way for what the attraction is supposed to be.
Yeah, part of it almost feels untouched, like it wasn't really changed too much. Yeah,
I mean, it's clean, it's maintained, but
yeah,
they haven't changed much of anything.
No, a lot of those caves are the same that you go through.
Yeah, I love the barrel bridge where you can see the Haunted Mansion right across the way. That's fun.
And it's not just like it's not like a Country Bear thing where it's like go here because this is how it used to be. It's like it's how it used to feel as when you were a child, but like you can still feel it as an adult.
I like it. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna mention a whole land because it's one of my favorite lands at Disneyland, and that's New Orleans Square.
Yes.
Yeah. It's unique. They don't have it at any other park, and I just love the feel of it when you're walking through those streets there. The way it was designed, supposed to be like you can almost get lost in there, and there's no straight pathways, and I mean it's all done intentionally, obviously, but yeah. New Orleans.
And thank you, Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dan. I had about 14 answers before you just said that, and I see your New Orleans Square, and I'll counter you Liberty Square.
Okay.
Liberty Square is unique; you can't find it anywhere. The houses or the buildings in Liberty Square, starting at the Haunted Mansion, based on a early 1700s architecture in upstate New York, and moving its way through the land to 1776. Where the Independence Hall, where you hold the Hall of Presidents, and as you move up into the land, the building numbers increase from 1700 to 1800, etc. And the architecture of the building with that number on it, it represents the year in which that architecture was popular, all the way up through and until you get to Diamond Horseshoe, which is a St. Louis style architecture, which is the gateway to the west, and then you get into Frontierland. So it's a transition through the land. In addition, Liberty Square has a sort of a brown streak running through it, which is meant to represent a river of poop, because during that time people would throw their stuff out the window and it would collect in the middle of the street. So that's represented in Liberty Square. At night, you can see lights in the windows of one of the buildings. And if one lantern is lit, that's 1 if by land, and 2 if by sea. That's if invaders are coming by land, there was 1 lamp lit. If invaders are coming by sea, there are 2 lamps lit. And I could go on, but I will counter you with Liberty Square.
And if anyone who is a Disneyland purist or fan or whatever listens to those and listens to that and thinks, okay, but what's the vibe like? Because for me, New Orleans Square, it's a super vibey place, and I love that vibe. What I think for me, at least for me, I've discovered in doing this podcast is that it's not so much that Disney World kind of has its own version of the Disneyland vibe thing, and it tends to be that sort of. I'm not diminishing it, but to me, it's not what I look for, but it's what some people do look for, that more like, hey, did you know sort of thing that unlocks a level of interest to Disney World. And again, I'm trying to think of a way to say this in a way that doesn't make it sound like negative, but it's coming out of my head, and the vibe thing is so important. And that other thing is like way less important. But if you are that kind of person who like, ooh, I didn't know that, like if you like, memorizing baseball scores or something like
Go on.
I'm not then Disney World has a lot of that kind of stuff. And if going in, then that could be another layer to it, where at Disneyland it tends to be, again, more like this unspoken kind of vibe thing where it's like, I don't really know how to put it into words, but I'm feeling this thing,
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
The whole New Orleans, we talked about this a couple of shows ago with Tom Morris, and we were talking about how amazing New Orleans is designed, just the whole design of it. I know that most guests don't know or even care, but just the whole way it's designed, where the Pirates is lodged in there, and it's got these different layers, and it's just a marvel. I think just the way it's all laid out.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff that like, and this is something I say on the show a lot. It's a steal from Red Letter Media, so they deserve the credit. There's a lot of stuff that like you might not notice it, but your brain did, you know?
Yeah, the music is obviously in the real New Orleans is a big part of the city, so they have that integrated into the, to have that feel. Live music. There used to be a lot more live music. There's not. Seem like when you turn a corner, it'd be a guy playing a guitar, be a little Dixie band playing over here and there. Not as much lately.
Yeah, a lot more Burning Infernos, though.
Yeah. What?
That dragon lit on fire.
Too soon.
Sorry.
Yeah, I get it.
That's the day before we went, Lynn.
I know, right?
Where were you?
At the hotel.
Asleep.
Okay. Is it Jimmy?
Yeah, that was the square. But the other thing I was thinking of, Lynn, was before you mentioned New Orleans Square, which by the way did win in the argument. Was Ken was talking about park hopping and the ease of park hopping and that sort of thing, and that kind of reminded me of the antithesis of that, which is scale. Now, we decided a long time ago in our discussions around Disney World versus Disneyland is that size couldn't be the winner, because it's not Disneyland's fault that it's not as big. And so that sort of size can't be the winner in an argument. But to the point, you could put Disneyland and Disney's California Adventure in what I would recommend a Disneylander does when they go to Disney World, which is the safari at Animal Kingdom. And you could put those two theme parks in that ride and they would fit comfortably, just to give you an idea. Kilimanjaro crazy. Safaris. It is a very unique experience. You've got a lot of there used to be story in it, but it's it's effectively it's not a zoo, but it's it's a really interesting experience, and it's really just, when that park was built, it was a cow pasture, and Imagineers brought in over 1 million different plant species, and they elevated the park to, I believe the highest point is 130 feet or something like that. The high point of the safari is way elevated above what it was originally when it was a cow pasture, and you can really feel that landscape and topography, and it does feel like it's always been there. The way they did the baobab trees, I'll just give you an example. A baobab tree is a African tree that is usually leafless throughout the year. And when my wife, she has an app, it's a National Geographic app called Seek, where you can like scan an animal or scan a leaf, and it'll tell you what that animal or leaf is, if what kind of tree it is, whatever. She scanned the tree at Disney World, and it said it's a baobab tree. So this this Disney Imagineering sculpture tricked an app, and it said this is what a baobab tree, this is where it's native to, and that's the kind of level of detail that we all love about Imagineering and Disney.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, that part
plot twist. Imagineering did that app. No,
that's Captain Jack Sparrow.
I lost track, but I think Eric's next.
All right. Well, Jimmy pretty much covered the next big thing you got to see, which is Animal Kingdom. I mean, it's that's kind of where I was going to go. Step up to a full park again here, but Jimmy covered it well. It's such a very immersive place. Multiple lands that don't exist anywhere else. All Joe Rohde touches everywhere. You feel that there's a history to this place that didn't exist. It was a cow pasture, as Jimmy was saying. Yeah, I think I'd like to maybe go way smaller here. And if you, as a Disneylander, by now you've probably come to terms with the loss of the Tower of Terror, and you probably like Guardians and what it brings. But if you're really set on Tower of Terror, I challenge you to go to Hollywood Studios, a park that is largely similar to certain portions of DCA, and go on the original Twilight Zone Tower of Terror with just way more extensive ride system where your car actually moves forward and moves from one elevator shaft to another. I can only imagine what it's like if you were used to the Disneyland version to then go to the Walt Disney World version. It's one of those experiences where you're like, oh, holy cow, this is way better. So yeah,
it's the correct version.
Yeah, it really, it's mind bending. It's weird. It's unexpected. You know that this is an up and down ride, and then the doors open and the ride goes forward. What is happening?
It definitely throws you off. It's like drinking Beverly or something, you know. Except much more pleasant.
Oh, you stole my answer, Ken. That was gonna be our next answer. It's Beverly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll come up with something else.
Yeah, the theming is much better. I think it's more immersive, and you follow the story better in Tower for sure.
And there's a lot more empty space too, which really suits the story.
For sure. Good one, Eric. Ken, do you have any?
Well, I was going to do the reverse of that and say, if I'm a huge Tower of Terror fan and Twilight Zone fan, and I've never seen the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, but Mission Breakout is Mission Breakout is a very, very good attraction. It's a lot of fun. We ride that and we are laughing and smiling, and so I would say you got to do that. If you're very familiar with Tower of Terror, you got to do Mission Breakout and compare how something that used to be the lesser version of Tower of Terror has become a great attraction of its own.
Great point.
They're definitely not the same ride. Even if you want to try to think of them as the same ride, it's like It's unfair to both versions to do that.
Yeah.
Different feeling, right? The Guardian's supposed to be fun, and you're, like you said, laughing, and the Tower is supposed to be scary and intimidating and mysterious.
Right.
Tower is genuinely unsettling in a lot of really nice ways.
Just like Twilight Zone, the series.
Right.
I mean,
right. But Guardians is just, it's fun, even to a stupid degree, but like that good kind of stupid where it's just like, oh, I get it. This is just fun.
Right. Yeah. It's just constant movement.
Mm-hmm.
You're cheering. You don't know why you're cheering. You can hardly hear what people are saying because it's just so loud and everything's happening. But
right.
It's great.
And in the development, Ken, of the Tower of Terror, Imagineers watched every episode of The Twilight Zone, and there are countless references that are just so obscure that are all throughout that attraction that if you know, like everything else we've talked about, if you know, then it just makes it all that much better.
Yeah. And it just, I want to highlight a Disney connection. June Foray, you hear her in Pirates of the Caribbean saying, don't be cheeking, Carlos. Do not tell him. She, of course, was just a prolific voice artist and a big champion of animation. But she did the voice of the Chatty Cathy dolls originally. The talking doll from back in the 50s, and one of the most memorable episodes of Twilight Zone that I can think of, the Talking Tina episode. I believe it's Telly Savalas, and there's a talking doll that haunts him that, and June Foray did the voice of that doll too. So it's, because obviously she's based on Chatty Cathy. So that's an interesting Disney connection that, I takes you down a rabbit hole. So I'm sorry for diverting the talk here.
Oh, that's awesome.
No, that's cool.
I had to throw that in. She says, in the Twilight Zone, you can't hurt me, but I can hurt you. It's just like, oh my gosh.
Dan, what do you have?
I'm gonna go the other way here, and
Okay.
I'm gonna kind of cheat, but not make it feel like I'm cheating. Oh, damn it! I just did that. Disney World to Disneyland, Fantasmic, and World of Color. But only if after being at Disneyland for like 5 hours or so, you're like, okay, I get this. If you're in that mode of like, that castle is not as big, and if if you're still in comparison mode and you haven't accepted that these are different things, probably don't bother, because you're not going to find what you're looking for in them. But if you get it, Fantasmic and World of Color, and expect World of Color to just be a fountain show, because it's more fun if you go in that way. Our Fantasmic at Disneyland is, I don't know, I feel like Eric can do this better than I can, because I've always loved Fantasmic at Disneyland, and he might not love Fantasmic at Disneyland, but
no real connection to it. That's fair.
Yeah, but I think you can speak to this more accurately than I can, I think, because I feel like you know where I'm going with this, but you can probably explain it better because of how my brain does words.
You mean the somewhat accepted inferiority of Fantasmic at Walt Disney World?
Well, I think a lot of people will be scared off because you don't have a place to sit. And that is a problem.
Okay, I see where
that
you're
is
going.
a problem. And I could see how people would think, well, I've seen it, so why should I sit on the ground and not be comfortable for X amount of time?
Yeah, yeah. When we've talked about this a lot in person and on the show, but what I think you're going for, Dan, is that concept that this is a regular part of the park. It's part of New Orleans Square / the Rivers of America / Tom Sawyer Island. It's things that you see all day long, and then suddenly it transforms into this massive show at a certain time each night. And there's a I'll just say magical component to that. I mean,
yeah,
definitely.
Well, and
I'm not a
and the
huge
show-
fan, but I think that's really cool.
right. And the show itself is, I don't want to say objectively better at Disneyland. In terms of like it not just being a cavalcade of character dump, like there's an attempt at a story. The effects are, I think, stronger at Disneyland.
We have more fire at Disneyland.
Not sometimes not where we want it. Yeah.
Yeah, but to your point, Dan, I was on that riverboat earlier today. I was on that island earlier today, and it's all come alive, and it's a much better experience at Disneyland for sure.
And it is not the same show. It is I mean, it hits a lot of the same beats, but
is it fair to say that at Disney World it is a show because there's a theater, an amphitheater, and you wait and you have your seat, whereas at Disneyland it's more that the park comes alive and it's more of an experience?
Yeah, I mean, I sound like an advertisement here, and I guess in some ways I am a living advertisement for these experiences.
Sure,
but it feels like an event. It feels like, okay, I've been in this park. I've walked past that all these times. I mean, and of course there is all that. There's a sense of community and camaraderie because everyone's uncomfortable because they're sitting on the ground, and it's just a very cool, fun experience and a better show. That is very unique to the feel of being at Disneyland. You cannot capture that at Disney World just because of the nature of how just big it is and the nature of it and everything. Disney World doesn't lend itself to that more like communal sort of experience.
Yeah.
It also becomes part of the area. I mean, you could just be walking by it as you're going from Haunted Mansion to Adventureland and see part of the show just by walking through. Yeah.
And then World of Color, I mean, it's not nearly as good or complex as Fantasmic, but it's all we have right now. And I've explained it to people as it's like it's the plucky water show that could, and its personality tends to be, it's like that really interesting, quirky kid in class that like it got the assignment and understands the rubric, but it's like kind of also bored by it. So it just goes in all sorts of other directions while still completing the assignment. I don't know if that made any sense.
It did. Yeah.
And I've been that weird kid.
Well, I'm going to go with one, and I'm not saying it's better, but I did want to have this discussion with this attraction because some people have different opinions, and that's Haunted Mansion. But I do want to say right away, Haunted Mansion Holiday is something that I really enjoy. I'm not saying that's better than the normal, but I do enjoy the change. What do you guys think?
I think it's great.
Yeah, it was a very controversial episode, Lynn.
Oh, okay.
We did the Haunted Mansion. It was our most controversial because we determined that Disney World's was better.
Very special episode.
It was a very special episode, Ken. And it really, what it boiled down to was the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. Yes, while it was the original, both were developed at the exact same time in the exact same warehouse. Everything was duplicated. It's the same. There's more of an interactive element in the queue at Disney World. There's more show scenes at Disney World. And the reason Disneyland lost, despite the fact that as you're exiting the Disneyland ride, you're on a speed ramp that acts as you're coming out of a tomb at the end. And it's like you're coming back out of the ground. And it's something that I don't think
you never say this sincerely on the actual show.
No, but the point is that the
Jimmy
reason
likes to bully me. Okay.
The reason Disneyland didn't win is because it's not Haunted Mansion half of the year.
Okay. I get it.
And you can't go on Halloween. You can go on a Christmas ride.
That's right.
Which I love.
I mean, as a Disney Worlder, that is definitely that's something to consider because it is a completely different ride and it's a new
Mhm.
experience. I was really looking forward to it the first time I went.
What about
Which-
the second time? And the third?
I still love going, and I have dreams about the gingerbread house smell.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, Dan. I wasn't on that
It's
episode,
fine.
everybody.
It's fine.
Especially if you like the movie Nightmare Before Christmas, then you're gonna love that.
It's fine. I just don't think that we need to have it every year.
It does take up what 5 months of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it also, especially if you are like me, becoming increasingly cynical about it becoming that version of the ride,
Mhm.
operationally it's treated completely differently during that time, where they are essentially doing like those videos you see of like subway systems where they like shove people in with a stick. You know, like it really becomes just like, okay, let's get them in, let's get them out. There's overlapping of different groups. Like I have not waited in actually feeling like I'm waiting in a second line in the portrait hallway. I've never had that feeling more so than when it is Haunted Mansion Holiday, because it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, here's line part 2, which it always
Right.
kind of is, but it's like they are like stacked up against the elevator. I
Mhm.
mean, sorry, the stretch room.
And it's a necessity in Southern California at Disneyland because you have, the famous quote is it's the world's most famous regional theme park. And because you have so many locals, you have to have that rewritability of changing it out. So I get why it's there, but if you're comparing Haunted Mansion to Haunted Mansion, it's not always Haunted Mansion.
Yeah.
Right. Disneyland does have working stretching room that you actually do have that feeling.
Mhm.
That's a good point.
True.
Very good point.
Small World Holiday. I mean, you want to talk about the holiday versions.
True,
Small
yeah.
World Holiday is insanely popular.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It actually makes a small. I think it's a better version of the ride, and I do not like holiday stuff, and I'm not a huge fan of it's a small world is fine. I'm not anti. I'm not one of those people. It's like, oh no, get me away from that. It's just like it's just another ride. But Haunted Mansion, Small World Holiday, just the sheer, just over the top ridiculousness of it, and it doesn't take down the attraction for very long. It's like a month, unless they have water issues. It's
Yeah.
that one is it's delightful, and I mean like literally delightful.
Mhm. I agree. Yeah. So Jimmy, I believe, is next. Although you
Yeah,
kind of
so-
were talking.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go to the Walt Disney World monorail. And there are 12 trains that cover 14.7 miles of track. And if you're not afraid of falling to your death out of an open door, it's a fascinating system. It's a transportation system at Disneyland as well, because you're going from Disneyland, Tomorrowland to the Disneyland Hotel, which is a whole other conversation with Jack Rather, et cetera. But the conveyance through Epcot and to the hotels and to Magic Kingdom, and just the amount of experience you can get on that ride, whether you have a park ticket or not. And I think that's really a nice enhancement to Walt Disney World, that you can just be a person that just driving through, and you can get out of your car, pay $30, and then get on that ride effectively. Plus the monorail booze cruise, but that's a different show.
True, it's used more of a transportation. I mean, it could be at Disneyland. It gets you to to downtown Disney, but it's definitely used more as a transportation than at Disney World.
Yeah, then where it's an attraction. And in here, Lynn, I don't know, you're a concierge, and you do your concierge training through Disney. And the question on one of the quizzes was, is there an attraction at Downtown Disney? And the answer is, yes, there is.
Yes,
It's the monorail.
yes.
But I got that wrong.
It's considered attraction. Yeah.
I got that wrong.
That's funny. That's a trick question.
I said, yes, there is. And they said, nope, there's not.
Eric, we have time for one more for everyone. Eric.
Okay. Well, if Jimmy brings up the monorail, I'm gonna bring up the Skyliner.
Ooh.
A completely unique mode of transportation. Disney World's big on transportation because you have to you can't just walk between the parks, of course, as we've discussed. And as much as I love things like taking I really love taking a boat between parks and between hotels. That's fantastic. But the Skyliner is it echoes the old Skyway buckets. It's a large conveyance that can have, what would you say, Jimmy, like 8 people in each one?
Yep.
And
with emergency water and pee-pee kits as well,
right,
due to that initial 4-hour shutdown where people had to be evacuated.
Oops, yeah. But it travels between, it's got a few different spurs. It's got a central hub near one of the resorts, the Caribbean Beach. And it heads over to, from there it heads to, one spur goes to Hollywood Studios. One spur goes to Art of Animation Resort and Pop Century Resort. And another one stops by the Riviera Resort on its way to Epcot and all of the Epcot area resort hotels as well. So it's this great way that took some of these hotels they're kind of out of the way. Caribbean Beach has always been kind of it's a moderate resort. It's a very big resort, but it's pretty popular, but it's in the middle of nowhere. And even further away are Art of Animation and Pop Century, and they're value resorts. So they're some of the cheapest on property. And it transformed them. Suddenly they're some of the most popular resorts because you can get to 2 parks, just like if you're staying on the monorail loop around the Seven Seas Lagoon, you can get to Epcot, you can get to the Magic Kingdom. Well, now there's a whole group of resorts that can get to the other 2, get to Epcot and Hollywood Studios very easily, very clean and efficient and quiet. It's not a bus. Sure, the air's not blasting like they are on the buses, but it's extremely pleasant, even in really hot months. You get off the ground and it's designed to just have air flow through this gondola. And it's great. Unless you have a problem with heights, I say you've got to try it out. It's delightful, and it really changes the way people get around the parks now.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good about it. I need to try it when I go.
Yeah, definitely.
10.
Yeah, well, if we're wrapping up, I've got a bunch of little things I wanted to say, but I don't, maybe leave me to be last, or have you already done that?
No, yeah, we'll skip you. And if we have time at the end, we'll bring you in. It's Dan's turn then.
Ooh. This one, okay. If you're going from Disneyland to Disney World, don't expect it to be the same. It is not the same. And one of those things is, if you back pocket the idea that when you're in Epcot in World Showcase, you're gonna, there are attractions and there are places to eat and drink, and that's all fine. That's absolutely part of it. Mm-hmm. But you're missing it if you focus entirely on, going from this thing to that thing to that thing to that thing, because you can do that at Disneyland without like missing a ton because it's compact, but World Showcase really becomes super interesting, and you kind of unlock the Disney World experience a little bit, where it's like, I'm going to just explore all of this pavilion for a little bit. And in a way that's like very drifty and loose, and not, again, the difference between like the Tom Sawyer's Island at Disneyland, where it's like, okay, now look at that has a sign, look at that, read that, look at that thing over there. But then the other experience where it's just like, I'm just going to get lost. And you can't entirely get lost, because if you go a certain number of feet in a certain direction, you're going to get back on the main thoroughfare. So then it's even more safe to just get lost. And some pavilions lend themselves more to that than others. Morocco, Canada, kind of UK, France. I just wanted to prove that I've been there. So yeah, just back pocket that idea that like, yeah, we're gonna try to do attractions, and it's so frustrating because you almost have to turn off the part of your brain that is like, I only have a certain amount of time here. I spent X amount of dollars. I should be on Space Mountain right now. And blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, okay, that's all true. But there's also this, and you're missing this if you're focused on that.
I like that. Yeah. I'm going to go with the whole land again on this one. And that's Fantasyland, because there's so many little things that I think are unique to Disneyland. And Mr. Toad, now Walt Disney World doesn't have that.
Take that, Eric.
No.
Snow White. I know they have the dwarfs mine train, but the dark ride, Snow White, Casey Jr., and Alice in Wonderland, and then Pinocchio. So and then you can clump Matterhorn in it. But yeah, but just in Fantasyland proper, like in the middle there, I think that's definitely unique and different at Disneyland for sure. Casey Jr. is underrated too.
Agreed. Lynn, at Disney World, like you said, Mr. Toad is no longer there.
Yeah.
In the graveyard at the Haunted Mansion at Disney World, there is Mr. Toad and a headstone. And the headstone reads, "Here lies Mr. Toad. It's sad but true, but not nearly as profitable as Winnie the Pooh."
I like that.
Because it was replaced by Winnie the Pooh.
That's cool.
Still too soon.
Yeah, well.
I will say that Fantasyland and Disneyland definitely has a more Walt feel to it than Walt Disney World's for sure.
Yes.
And that's what makes it more special, I think.
Well, and that brings us to another thing that we've decided on the show, is that the Walt touched it argument is something that we, again, there are times when there are legitimate things that come up as a function of size, and that's something that we hash through. But this Walt touched it argument is kind of Disneyland's version of that, where it's like, we can't automatically say that it's better or that it gets a point or that it wins simply because Walt touched it. But if you can feel that he touched it in like a very almost spiritual way, I'm starting a church based on Walt Disney is what I'm getting to. People would do it too.
Yeah, they would.
The Walt touched it thing is very present in Fantasyland at Disneyland.
Almost probably more than anywhere. Well, that in Main Street, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, Main Street. The train.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So Lynn, I think what I want to finish with is, and I'm going to lead up to it, but the thing about Disney World, and we talked about the scale, but I want to just talk about a couple of things that I find fascinating by it. And I'm a Disneylander.
Yeah.
Grew up there. I worked there. It's my home park. But half of my life's been on the East Coast. And so I've really come to know and learn more about Disney World, especially through the podcast and just learning more detail about things. But Disney World has 36 hotel resorts.
Wow.
26 of them are operated by Disney. There are 30,000 hotel rooms on property. And there are more certified wine sommeliers per capita at Walt Disney World than anywhere in the world. So if you're a Disneylander and maybe your kids are grown or you don't have kids, my wife and I say our best trips to Disney World are the ones without our kids. And there's an experience at Walt Disney World that is one of very few in the entire world. And, you know, AAA has a diamond recognition, and 5 diamond is the highest rating that AAA offers. There are a total of 2 restaurants in the state of Florida that have a AAA 5 diamond award. And one of them is at Walt Disney World. It is Victoria and Albert's at the Grand Floridian. It is a 7-course dinner that is uniquely catered to each individual. I mean, they have a menu, but you can get it specifically catered to you. Disney World has 300 restaurants and 350 chefs. And this particular restaurant, I just share a little anecdote. You know, it used to be that if you wanted to make a dining reservation, you had to call.
Yeah.
And so I called one time. We're going to go to Victoria and Albert's, which is, you know, not for everyone price wise, but a 7-course dinner that is just every course is presented like a ballet. And, you know, if you're a table of 6, there are 6 people that come out at the exact same time, and your your course is revealed at the exact same time by your 6 waiters. There's one time I called. I was like, I'm traveling. Here are the names of the people I'm traveling with, and one of the people's last name is Stelter. Mr. Stelter has a nut allergy, so make sure that, you know, he doesn't have any nuts in his menu. They created the menu for him specifically without nuts for all 7 courses, and it was just an exquisite meal. I think it was 4 years later. I called again. We're going back with different party, but the Stelters were going to be there. And I called and I said, here are the names of the guests that were coming. This is before the app. This is before, you know, all the technology we have now. I gave the names and they said, is Mr. Stelter still allergic to nuts? And I'm like, yeah, just a random guy calling.
Wow.
The level of service and this whatever they're doing, record keeping, is just absolutely exquisite. And the menu has your name on it. It's got the date on it. It's got each individual course and everything that's listed. You take it home. You know, the women get roses, and it's just such an exquisite experience that is just something you can't find at Disneyland.
Wow, that's amazing. I had no idea about some of that.
Yeah.
Well, at Disneyland, it would be just an absolute waste of space, wouldn't it?
I don't know. I don't know that it would, Dan. I think, you know, think about the one at Disneyland Hotel. Think about the restaurant that's not opening again. The Steakhouse 55.
I mean, at that level, with that level of, I mean, yeah, probably there. Don't get me wrong. They'd probably have they'd have reservations all the time, like not as in not open. But I think it sounds to, as we're in that like summing up brain as we all are, it's, as you were talking about that, I was like, yeah, it really goes to that thing that we touch on a lot, which is, well, okay, which is better? Well, how much time do you have? Are you and are you looking to have the ultimate resort hotel experience, or are you going to a theme park?
I think though the counter argument to that, Dan, is that people who are going to Disneyland live nearby, most likely, and are annual pass holders or whatever. And I think that there's so much money in Southern California that I think that would probably be more popular at the Disneyland Hotel than it would be at Grand Floridian, because they're just, people are willing to waste 3 hours to have a meal because they're going to be back tomorrow.
Right. I'm not trying to present like a business, or I'm not saying like the economy of it doesn't exist. I'm just saying that like it would be in all sorts of ways, perception wise and everything, it would just be kind of not the best move for them to do that level of that experience at that price point for Disneyland, because there is so little space. You want to
55. It's called Walter and Lillian's. Open it tomorrow.
What?
Walter and Lillian's. That's the name of the Victoria and Albert's equivalent. It's Walter and Lillian's. It's Steakhouse 55. The end.
I mean, Napa
already exists.
Napa has similar experiences.
Oh,
I don't know at that level, Eric.
Not quite. No, definitely not in that realm. But still, there is. I mean, it's a pricier meal. There are sommeliers. Yeah, definitely not the serving experience, but.
You have that at the Grand. You have that at the lodge, the Wilderness Lodge. They have that equivalent. I haven't done that episode yet, but they have the Napa Rose equivalent there.
Well, now it's a character dinner.
Oh, never mind.
Artist Point, yeah.
Artist Point. Thank you.
It's a Snow White character dinner, which is a little. I'm kind of tempted. I don't know. It's weird.
Then why don't you take your show back?
I'm just listening to you guys. Ken, let's why don't you wrap it up? You said you had a lot.
Well, as I suspected, a couple of those things were covered by others, which is exactly what I wanted to happen.
Yeah.
I did want to point out that for somebody who is very familiar with Disneyland, and they're visiting Walt Disney World, the original Country Bears are there. which is one of Lynn's big favorites. And I like it too. The American Adventure, which I consider one of the best attractions of all time.
For sure.
And I really like Rock and Roller Coaster. You know, and if the flip side, somebody might want to experience the Incredicoaster at California Adventure if they're into roller coasters at all, or if they really want a smooth, mild coaster. I mean, relatively mild. But you know, Walt Disney World does have 2 major water parks. So if you're into that at all, you've got, you know, Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach. And I just don't think Disneyland's going to get anything like that because of just the space that's available. But one of the things, you know, in closing, from my perspective, I wanted to point out is the more things are duplicated pretty much exactly the same on both coasts, the less reason I have to go to Walt Disney World. So I like when they have differences. I understand why, you know, you do something like, you know, Galaxy's Edge, you try to make it exactly the same experience on both coasts. I understand why, but there needs to be stuff that's different.
Yeah, but do you though, Ken? I mean, why don't you make it different? For that very reason, you can double your revenue if you're like, oh, you know, I think you're saying this is like, it should be different. Galaxy's Edge should be different. You're going to spend the money, and yes, so to your point, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, it's a better queue at Disneyland, but it's the same ride. So why do I go? But they should, to your point, make it different enough that I'm going to go over there and spend my money over there also. You know, you double your revenue if you're Disney. Why don't you?
If anything, Galaxy's Edge should be different on each coast because there's such a huge Star Wars audience that people from either coast would go to the opposite. You know, they would definitely, you know,
yeah,
there
used to be a hotel about that. But I mean, and there are subtle differences, and we did explore 6 hours of content discovering the differences between the two. You know, there's different paint because of the sun.
Yes.
And you know, there are
Jimmy,
differences.
We want people to listen.
Oh yeah, good point. But not enough that it would motivate someone to fly across the country to see either one because it's different enough, right? Sorry, Ken, you served again. Go ahead.
No, that was my point. Thank you very much.
Well, I think we could go on and on all night, like you had said, and I don't want to do a 6-hour show, but Jimmy, why don't you tell everyone, give a little plug for your podcast, and
I feel like we've done that for the last hour.
But do it officially.
All right. Well, the show is called The Supreme Resort, Land v. World. The impetus of the show is that I grew up at Disneyland. I used to work there. I've been there countless numbers of times. And then I moved east and I went to Disney World, and I've been there countless number of times. I could teach college level courses on these places, as you might have imagined. And whenever I talk about this passion of mine, people would always say, which is better? And I stop and legitimately think about it. I don't know. I really don't know. And so I just kind of, I know Dan, I've known Dan most of my life. And it's like, you know, he's similar passion. And we found another person who's no longer on the show, but Eric, who has a similar passion. And it's like, let's really explore this. And the original idea, Lynn, was for it to be, because it's so subjective. It's like any art. I wanted it to be as serious as possible, like Roe v. Wade, Supreme Court level serious, right? Just for irony. And so that's why it's called The Supreme Resort, Land v. World. Now, we started with the castles, which is better. And we decided that as a weenie, which if you don't know that term, then, you know, you're not truly a Disney fan. But, you know, as a weenie, which does it better, you know, as an example. And then we went on to Everest versus Matterhorn and Ken's point, Incredicoaster versus Rock and Roller Coaster. We try to find as many equivalences as we can, just to kind of empirically decide which is better between the two. So we go into a lot of painstaking detail. And when we say 6 hours on Galaxy's Edge, that is not a joke.
It's not all one episode.
It's not. There are 3 episodes, and it is a little bit of a joke. But we do have a lot of fun. We're very passionate about these places. We care about it like you do.
Yeah.
And it's just a way to really kind of explore these 2 resorts and what they are and what they mean to people. And we understand why it's so important and why there was such vitriol when we decided that Disney World was a better haunted mansion, and why there's so much passion, and why Dan had 25 pages of notes on Disneyland. and anyway, so it's fun. It's our passion. We love it. And certainly if your listeners enjoyed what they heard for the last hour, come on over and give us a shot.
Yeah, for sure. I advise that. I do want to wrap up and say that people have asked me that, what's better. I don't think either one is better. I think that they both complement each other, as we've kind of discussed here. You can see there's differences, but there's good reasons for those. So yeah, and I think that kind of comes across in your show, the episodes that I've heard so far. So yeah,
there was one episode that we really liked. It was the most patriotic thing Disney ever did.
Oh yeah, that was probably your best.
Great guest host.
That was the best show you did.
Seek that out.
That was so long ago, I don't remember. Well, thanks for coming on, guys. I really appreciate it. We had a good time.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Okay, what an episode.
Yeah, that was a nice, fun discussion.
Yeah, Disney World is something that I've only been once. You've been there numerous times, but it's still, I'm learning more about it. Of course, I have to. Concierge, I've been booking trips lately for Walt Disney World, and I've been kind of forced to learn more about it. And the more I learn, the more I want to go, and I do need to go in the next year or two.
People really, I would imagine a lot of people who listen to this podcast have been to Disneyland a bunch of times. But if you've never been to Walt Disney World, or it's been a long time, hit Lynn up, go on a concierge booking through Lynn, and then you've got to go visit Walt Disney World to compare the differences, and especially if it's been a while, or if you've never been. So
yeah, for sure. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks to guys over at Supreme Resort coming on. We had a good time. So like we always do, when we get a review on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, I like to read them just to spread the news and tell others what other people think about our show. So they always cut off the title on this app. So this is 5 stars, titled Can't Sweep by This, I think. So, and it's June 2nd, 2023. And it was written by Believe in the Magic. It says, I really enjoy your podcast. Thank you for sharing your first-hand knowledge and bringing amazing guests on to talk about their experiences. All right. All right. Short and to the point.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
It's good to get that feedback.
Always good. So go on over to our website. We have t-shirts. We have just a whole bunch of things going on over there. Check out our books, of course, over there. Links to everything is on our website.
And if you haven't actually subscribed to the podcast, like at Apple Podcasts or YouTube or wherever, do subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes. Alternate weeks we do the current events, so we catch you up on what's been happening in the last couple of weeks at the resort. And so, we had one come out last week, and we'll have another one next week. And it's great to get the perspective of 2 former custodial cast members on what's happening now.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you for listening, and we'll talk with you next time.